Welcome to CMC. I'm Janika Pierce-Tucker, a member of CMC Board of Trustees and a partner with Taft Law, and I am excited to be here. This week, CMC partnered with Columbus Monthly to provide a conversation around their May cover story, What Columbus Needs. This forum is brought to us with support from Omer & Byrne, the Robert Weiler Company, and Puffin Foundation West. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors and partner for making today's forum possible. While we are all proud of our booming and creative city, we know that there is always room for improvement. Columbus Monthly polled dozens of government officials and leaders of businesses, the arts, and civic associations to find out what they think would make Columbus better. Their answers range from the serious, such as narrowing the gap between Columbus haves and have-nots, to the playful, like a catipulate that flings fruit across the Scioto River. Let's talk about some of these ideas. Please welcome the founder and creative director of Harmony Project, David Brown. Director of Education for the City of Columbus, Rhonda Johnson. Chair of Transit Columbus, Alyssa Snyder, and our host today, let people clap for you. And our host today, Senior Editor of Columbus Monthly, Dave Ghosh. Dave, the podium is yours.
Thank you. Before we start our panel discussion, I wanted to just explain a little bit more about what Columbus needs at this feature. The concept is pretty simple. It's a survey with just one question: what can Columbus do to improve itself? There are no restrictions on answers. We asked for 3 ideas from each respondent, and that's pretty much it. The answers were serious, silly, idiosyncratic, ridiculous, self-serving, brief, lengthy. It didn't matter. All ideas were welcome. Also, a little bit of history on the project. Our publisher, Ray Pebrocki, who's here today, and is also a member of the Columbus Metropolitan Club. He originated the idea in 1996, back in his editing and writing days. And since then, we've tried to return to the project every 5 years or so. Our May issue, which is on newsstands now, right here, marks the 5th time we've done the survey. With this project, we aim to try to get input from a diverse cross-section of informed and interesting folks involved in the life of the city. We've also, for the first time, we sent out the survey to the membership of the Metropolitan Club, and we got a lot of great answers from all of you, so we really appreciate that. In total, we had more than 100 folks who offered up their constructive criticism on the challenges our city is facing today, as well as their hopes and dreams for improving the city. What was striking this time around, though, was how 3 concerns dominated the responses: transportation, education, and poverty/inequality, which we lumped together, which leads to our esteemed panel. We asked Alyssa, Rhonda, and David to be part of our discussion because we think each of them offers some interesting insights on each of those topics. So I will get the discussion started. Alyssa, I wanted to start with you. Okay. Transportation was our top concern. And when we spoke before, I thought you said something pretty interesting. You had said that our kind of car-centric transportation system is sort of like being addicted to cigarettes. So that obviously leads to a question: how do we break the addiction? And as far as I know, there is no nicotine transportation patch. So what's our option?
Well, I mean, maybe a patch is high-capacity transit, or at least a stick of gum. You know, cars are like cigarettes or, beer or ice cream. They're, best consumed as sometimes food. Transit Columbus, we are not against cars, but believe that we should have more options and more ways to connect with each other. And walking and biking and riding transit bring us together. And I think, it's not as convenient as using your car to get everywhere. But that is also part of the point. I mean, if you think about the short north is a booming area. There's lots of development. You can do a crane experiment with downtown, right? You can tell me where the money is going. We all know. And people want to experience their cities best with a pair of tennis shoes, and that's what makes an area like the short north great. An area like Polaris, which is also great and really important to our city, is best navigated in a car. And you don't really have that kind of option. And so providing a mix and a balance of those things is something that we're very unbalanced as a city right now.
It seems like transportation also is an issue that affects our other three topics as well, education and poverty and inequality. So I'll start with you, Rhonda. How have limited transportation options affected your efforts at the city, particularly in early childhood? Because I know that's been a focus.
Thank you for that question. As you know, there is no transportation provided for children who are enrolled in pre-K except those children with special needs. So parents have to transport their children to centers or to home care or wherever they're receiving their early learning education. In many cases, the early childhood centers aren't located where parents live or where they work. Many of the opportunities are around the outer belt, so it is inconvenient for families to actually get their child to pre-K to begin with. So that is very much a challenge, being able to transport them, especially to high-quality centers. If we look, for example, on the west side of Columbus, there are few early learning opportunities on the west side than there are in other parts of town. And so families have to figure out how they can transport their children to centers not in their neighborhoods or not where they work. Or what usually happens is, what we don't want to happen, is that they don't have an opportunity to attend pre-K at all.
And David, you meet people from all walks of life with the Harmony Project. So I'm curious about our system, our limitations on transportation, if that's been a barrier for a lot of the people that you meet with.
I don't know if it's a barrier. I think it's just another obstacle, though. I don't know if they let it become a barrier. At South High, this is the best example I can give. Because many of our students do not have the resources to take driving classes, which with my two adopted new sons, I just found out cost $750 to take two driving classes that they still didn't learn how to park after they took. And we live in Sherman Village, so they're not driving my car anytime soon. But because of the lack of resources, there's a lack of access to learning how to provide your own transportation. And so my boys ride the bus everywhere, and because they ride the bus everywhere, I've learned about the bus system for myself. Having lived in New York 16 years, buses and subways became the way to do. And I know that we are moving toward more opportunities for us here. But I hope that people don't let it become a barrier. An obstacle is one thing, but that's where I think we as Columbus are doing a pretty good job of trying to help people not let it become an actual barrier.
Another question for you, David. When you did the survey, your top idea for improving Columbus was increasing cross-cultural interaction. And obviously that in itself doesn't seem like inequality is such a challenging issue. But so how can that address, at least get us started toward addressing the inequality that we see in so much of Columbus?
Okay, so Well, first of all, I think the first thing that we have to do if we're going to ask ourselves the question, what do we need, is to have a thick skin and be willing to, like, address things and not take it personally, you know? And so the example I would make when I say cross-cultural, I don't just mean black and white. I mean, I remember sitting at a table before I had actually come out and dealt with who I was as a gay man, sitting at a dinner table where people were talking about gay people in a very derogatory way. And I had to sit there as the blood rushed to my already red-tinted skin, and I was nervous and paranoid that, you know, somehow they were going to realize they were talking about me. They didn't know me, and they didn't know anybody. They didn't think they knew anybody who was gay, and so they had these issues. So the same thing, I've been at tables where there are people talking about Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, people talking about Republicans and Democrats, and they think that they're talking in a very safe space. The more that we engage, the more that we talk, and look, it's cliched, and I know that, but the reality is, the more that we sit at the table, the more stories that we hear of each other, the less we fear each other, because all of this division is based in fear. And the less that we fear each other, the more we can actually accomplish and work together. If our students on the South Side are able to be heard by employers downtown, they get to know the students are not poor students. They're students who live in poor conditions. It's not drug addicts. It's people who are addicted to drugs. So if we remove the stigmas from all of these differences that we have and try to engage more direct conversation, I think that that's what I mean by cross-cultural, that if we fear each other less, we'll kind of get to know each other more, and maybe that's the impetus to get us moving forward.
Alyssa, you had mentioned a living wage as one of your top needs for this city. Could you tell us what you mean by living wage?
Listen, I'm not connected to an exact number. I'll give you one, but I think it's probably somewhere between $15 and $20 an hour. You know, if you are at the poverty, what we consider at the poverty level in the state of Ohio, which for a single person is about $15,000 and some odd change, and our current minimum wage is $8.15, and if you do the math on that, you're still, even if you pay someone a minimum wage, you are still not paying them enough to be out of poverty by numbers that, by the way, haven't taken cost of living increases, you know, into effect in 15, 20 years. And I don't think that that's the way, and that's not the kind of city I want to live in, and that's a state policy, and I don't think this is necessarily even just about policy. This is about, you know, humans paying other humans to do work, and how we value each other, and what is the baseline for that. And I think it should be enough to feed your family.
Amen. I mean, seriously.
It seems like we have problems trying to get that, at least from a policy point of view, because I believe the State House is limiting what cities can do now. Is there a different route that we could take?
Yeah, I think if you pay somebody else to do work, you should pay them more. And you should find a way to do it. I don't know that it necessarily has to be City Hall telling you as a company that you should do it. I think that we should find a way to make that happen, and I think that there are some real economic advantages to that for companies as well. You know, obviously, that's something that, you know, is going to affect a bottom line, and eventually, probably in a good way, but it's a transition we haven't made. You know, we're always willing to pay someone at the top an extra bonus and don't think about how that's going to affect, you know, the price of something next week or next month or next year. But we don't think that way about paying people at the bottom. And so I think it's a change in perception. I think if you pay other people to do work, that you should seriously think about how you're affecting your own community.
I want to go to education a little bit. Rhonda, pre-K education seems to be the top priority of the mayor and his education interests. Why has that emerged as being so important?
I think pre-K has emerged as an issue not just for Columbus, but cities across the country, because we understand that we need to start doing upstream work instead of downstream work. We generally focus on just graduation rates, but what does it take to get to those graduation rates? Children don't start failing to graduate at 12th grade. It starts way before they even enter school. We know that most of a child's brain development, 85% of a child's brain development happens by the time that they're 3 to 4 years old. And so what's happening with those children who are 0 to 3 to 4 to 5? Are they being stimulated? Are they in developmentally appropriate environments and getting the kind of activities that they need? And so we know that children who are prepared for kindergarten are the same children who will do well on that 3rd grade guarantee test. We know that those are also the same children who are more likely to graduate from high school, more likely to have employment or go to college. So the work happens early, and so we can't wait until graduation the senior year and say we're in. So we know that that work happens very early on. And so if we are to move forward, we need to move forward with our littlest citizens to make sure that they have the opportunities to be successful in school.
David, I wanted to ask you about South High School, because I know how involved you are there. I wonder if you had some thoughts on, since you've seen it up close so much, what is working there and what might work there, and what we can do to change things from your experience?
What's working there is City Year Columbus. Oh, there's Tasha Booker. I'll expect my 20 when I walk out the door. Okay, yeah, I got it. Okay, 50? Oh, great, even better. City Year Columbus is doing remarkable work there. Look, education doesn't begin or end with the school. And we can sit around as many tables as we want, and we can get as many rich people in the rooms as we want to talk about education. But unless you're there, and unless you go in and actually see what's going on, and you see what these teachers are dealing with, and that many of them are burned out and exhausted, because they are not just the teacher. They are the father, they are the mother, they are the counselor, they are the doctor. When you're talking about schools where the majority of the kids' families make less than $18,000 a year, and there's no one there to get the kid up to get them to school, there's no one to make sure the kid is there on time, then you're talking about challenges that are way beyond just trying to get them to learn how to study and focus to get a grade. You're talking about the fact that the kids are not developing social skills. And I think that when people refer to our kids at South as being disadvantaged, and I've heard that so many times, and I'm like, okay, well, if they are, then if that's the only problem, then we need to make them advantaged. And so the way to make them advantaged is to then turn around and say, what do they not have? And not talking about money, but what do they not have that the kids at Bexley schools don't have? And what they don't have is the opportunity to learn how to make eye contact when you're in a job interview, to learn how to focus when you walk into a room and how to carry yourself and represent yourself, because no one is teaching them these things. So people think Harmony Project in our program there is about music. We spend an hour and 15 minutes with one song. And that drives the kids crazy. But that one song, the goal is to try to get them to understand how, if one verse is 35 seconds, you have to know how to watch me for 35 seconds. Because if you can't do that, you're not going to get a good job. And a good job is more opportunities. And more opportunities is bigger dreams. So what we can do is we can invest as much in the Columbus public schools as we do. I'm not knocking any other school when I say this, because I'm pro every school we have in this town, but put as much into our Columbus public schools personally as we do with Cristo Rey and KIPP and other charter schools and things like that. Invest in our Columbus students, and that will make a difference.
What have you learned at South High School that you didn't know before getting so involved in an urban high school?
Well, I mean, I worked in Harlem for a few years, and I worked in LA for a couple of years, but Columbus, What I learned about Columbus, not necessarily about students or schools, is that we are much more segregated than I even thought we were. I thought we were segregated. I didn't think Harmony Project would work here. Because all I ever saw was white people in restaurants and black people in restaurants and white people in church and black people in church. I didn't see a lot of places where there were people that were a lot together. And I would go to events and the audience would be either predominantly black or predominantly white. I didn't see a lot of mixing. And that was probably my observation just from having been in such diverse communities before, that maybe I was not seeing it as well as I should. But South High School has taught me that the South Side, which, you know, is spitting distance from here, I mean, it's not that far away, is for our kids, is a war zone many days of the week. They are jumped walking home from school. They live in fear. It's not just bad and needs attention. It's that it needs investment. It needs everybody buying into it, or it won't change. So that's what I would say I've learned.
Alyssa, I wanted to go back to transportation. This seems like a really exciting time for transportation. Lots of things going on with Smart City, and CODA is reinventing itself, and I think the Next Gen plan is coming out in the summer. So I'm wondering what excites you about what's happening, and also, are there some concerns, things you're still worried about, or some issues that are developing?
Yeah, I think it is generally, and in Columbus in particular, and especially with the Smart City Award coming here, you know, really exciting time. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think people are thinking differently because of innovation and things like automation and smart vehicles and electric vehicles and all of that. And I think that's awesome. I do also think that it is the tip of the iceberg. You know, I challenge us to think a little more broadly about how we really want to move people, not so much about this mode or that mode or anything else. And I think about, you know, thinking about super new things, right? This Hyperloop, which, dude, if it happens, like super cool, right? Like really exciting stuff and things that really can be possible in a relatively short amount of time. But at the same time, there's the Chicago to Columbus rail, right? And right now, rail's not as sexy. And I don't care which happens. I don't care what the mode is that connects us, but I want us to care about connecting Columbus to other cities, or connecting somebody who lives in Linden, you know, to be able to get to the doctor in Easton. I care about that piece, and I'm just not sure, as a city, as a group of people, as a group of community leaders, that we're there together about really deciding how we want people to be able to move, rather than about this mode or this possibility or this new innovation. I think there's opportunity for us to really create a base together about that vision for moving people, not so much about the mode or the situation or even the corridor. I think we need to think above that, and we need to find a way to come together as a vision around that, and that just isn't something that's happened in Columbus before. We've just figured we're just going to keep building more roads and all the things, and so far it's pretty much worked for us, right? And we're hitting a point where we're understanding that we're getting bigger as a city and more things are happening and different people want different things now, and so I think there's a real opportunity, and I think community leaders recognize the need for change. I think the thing that still concerns me is about us really all coming together and deciding how we want to move people.
And what happens if we don't change?
Listen, I think the point of a city, right, is to connect people. The point of a downtown is not to be a parking lot for cars, right? That's not why downtown Columbus exists. If we keep thinking about moving people quickly in and out, and that's our perspective and that's the way we measure ourselves, I think we're going to be in trouble, and I don't think we're going to be able to compete.
I'm going to go back to David. What strikes me about what you've done is it seems like you've created an island of diversity in an extremely segregated city. So I'm wondering if you could maybe point to a really remarkable moment of revelation that one of the people who participates in the Harmony Project has experienced, or maybe yourself, something that wouldn't have happened in some kind of incredible moment.
I'm going to get you for that. I'm gonna make you pay for that question. You won't see it coming either. Well, I mean, if I were to speak to someone else's experience out of context, then I'd be afraid that I might not represent it accurately. I mean, but I'm going to risk it because there's one that I think was very, very powerful. So there's a woman in our choir who is in her early 60s, social worker, Jewish, lives in Bexley, comfortable life, and has had her own challenges as well, but relatively speaking, comfortable life. And when the shootings occurred down in South Carolina at the church, she came walking into rehearsal that night, and everybody was shaken that day, And she came walking in, and she walked over to me, and she had tears in her eyes, and she goes, I don't know if I would have experienced this story today as I did because of my experience with the diversity in my world. She said, I've come to know all of these women in the section of the choir that I sit in as my sisters. She said, and they all go to Bible study at their Baptist church. She said, which is a foreign concept to me in my faith. And she said, but because we relate every week, she said, today I was like, that's Jackie, that's Patsy, that's my sisters. And that could have happened here just as much as it happened there. And she said, it opened my eyes to the need for us to be connected to each other. Personally, when I walked into prison for the first time to talk about maybe having a program there, I was personally impacted because I went in and they wanted me to work for the men's prison. And since we're on television right now during the daytime, I'll edit what I said. But I said something to the effect of, I'm afraid to work in a men's prison because I think I might not be the best fit for that situation. So that is a much modified version of what I said to the warden.
This only plays at 2 a.m.
This only plays at 2 a.m.? Okay, well, never mind. I'm still going to hold it off because I love Bob Weiler, and I'm not going to say anything that's going to embarrass Bob Weiler. But when I walked into the women's prison into the Tapestry Cottage for the first time, which is a rehabilitation program, and 85% of the women in the room were white, and I went, whoa, in typical white person way. Whoa, 85% of the women in here are white. So how come 85% of the women are white, but when I go to the men's prison, 85% of the men are black? Because it didn't make sense to me. And it made me then want to start digging and reading and understanding what was going on. So I read The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, and then I got to know her. And then it made me realize that what happens in our community is that black men are incarcerated at rates that are very, very different than white men. And the black women have been the matriarchs of the family. So they've had to rally and bring everything together. So they've had to stay out of trouble to hold the families together. But white women in these small towns around Ohio, and the small towns around Columbus, they live without resources, without access to education, to things. And so how do they fill their emptiness? They do heroin. They do opioids. And that's how the epidemic has increased. Walking into a prison just to find out about it opened my mind to this entire way that we treat and deal with things. So I think that's why I say I want people to connect to people that are different than them. You're not aware of what's going on right around you. Doesn't mean that you can solve all the problems, nor do I think it's my job to solve all the problems of the world. But when you're aware of it, I don't think that there's anybody in this room who, if you're aware of incredible imbalance that you're not going to want to somehow try to influence that in some way and right that ship in some direction.
One quick question, and then we need to go to Q&A, or the audience participation. One of the fun things about this project is I love the serious stuff, but I also kind of like the more trivial stuff. So I'm going to put you guys all on the spot. Do you have what are some more personal needs that you think Columbus needs, and anything's on the table?
I'm going to say a true commitment from the community for all children, not just your own children, but treating every child as your own. I think it was John Dewey. I'm going to mess up this quote, but it was something like, what the wisest and richest parents want for his child, so should the community want for everyone's child, and anything else is unlovely and left unchecked will destroy our democracy.
Speak.
Anyone else?
Better weather.
More men's clothing shopping options? Yeah.
Those are all excellent answers, but they do not top the fruit flying catapult.
No,
No,
they don't.
sorry.
Okay, so now I guess we're going to go to the Q&A. I'm going to read our instructions. It is the CMC's tradition to take audience questions. Please state your name, ask your question, and we thank you in advance for not making long editorial remarks. First question, please.
Tasha Booker with City Year. Thank you, David, for that. So we come to these forums and we talk a lot about the challenges, what we need. Can the three of you really share where there's some collaboration, some collective impact? What programs are working? What do we need to do to invest, to replicate and scale what's working?
Well, number one, when people say more green space, that's because we already have some. And so that's what I think is great. I hear people, we did a little thing on Facebook where we asked people to weigh in and tell us what they would like to say were they sitting at this panel. And people, Amtrak, major airline hubs, more public transportation, more green space, more parking spots, all that kind of stuff. And on the way walking in here, Tom Krause is texting me, more music. Karen Jones, more trauma therapy. Everybody's like trying to get their voice into the thing. But I think when you say more green space, folks, if you travel, we've got a lot more green space in this city downtown than most cities. We have great public transportation here. Yes, we can always improve, but I think that one of the things that you mentioned just then was collaborations. Look, living in New York and LA for 20 years of my life, there is no such thing like collaboration in the arts community as there is in Columbus. And there is collaboration. And artistic passion here has a social purpose, because artistic passion without social purpose is just selfish. So artistic passion and social purpose are done better here than anywhere. I love this town. Yeah, it's great. And grow, grow, grow. Bring on more problems. More problems mean we're growing.
I think we care about neighborhoods in a way that a lot of other cities don't. I think we concentrate and listen better. That doesn't mean that, all the answers and all the solutions are there and there isn't work to be done, but I think the way that we approach neighborhoods here is remarkable in comparison to peer cities.
And I would say just for the little kids, making an investment and thanking the partners that have come on board since we started this journey in 2014 of making sure that every 4-year-old has access to high-quality pre-K. We're not nearly where we need to be, and we need more investments. But I think about collaborations with Columbus State, Ohio State, Action for Children, all of our community partners who come on board to help make that happen.
Good afternoon. My name is Dawn Tyler Lee, and I work for the City of Columbus. Tasha took my question, so I had to do a quick pivot. So I'm interested in hearing, if you were talking to someone who was either here in Columbus and thinking about leaving, or perhaps in another community and thinking about coming, how would you sell them on moving to Columbus or staying in Columbus?
Well, Dawn, I've been asked a question, are you moving back to Alabama when you retire? And I said, well, why would I want to do that? Because Columbus is a great place. The weather is better in Alabama, yes, and I can visit when I want to, but you know, living in the South for me is just not an option. Well, you know why. So, but it is about neighborhoods. It's about the people, and it's the passion that people have for Columbus. I think we're all very proud of living here, and would not think about really living anywhere else. I'm just proud. I came to Ohio State in 1977. And I've been here, and this is my hometown. I feel like I grew up here. And why would I ever want to leave with all this stuff? And the change that has happened over the last 20 years. I've been here for nearly 40 years now. But just the changes that have been made, and it is welcoming. And, you know, you can get a seat at the table. Sometimes you may have to demand it. But you can be a part of the fabric of Columbus.
Yeah, I think I was going to say something similar. I think we make space for each other here, I think, better than other places. There's a space for you to do what you want to do and to get involved in what you're passionate about in a way that I don't think exists in other cities. Yeah, you might have to fight for it, but keep talking, keep shouting, keep living your passion, because this is a place you can do it.
And I would just say, look, it's affordable. I mean, it's just so much more affordable than other mid-major sized cities around the country. And the bang for your buck and the return on the value of what you get for life here is so much greater than anywhere else. Yeah, and what they're doing with downtown, there's visionary leadership here. And that's what's changing the face of our city every single day. So it's affordable, it's a great place to live, and there's room to grow, and what they said. Yeah.
My name is Barbara Pratzner, and I'm struck with every single one of your answers at how interrelated and interconnected your issues are. And I'm remembering a program that was very edgy for its time in Columbus a couple of decades back called Beyond the Freeways, whose point was to get busy executives who might use their garage door opener to get in and out of their garage and into their protected parking space downtown, and just not really see what was going on in the city. And the program included, I think it was most of a day, visiting a food bank, a welfare office, a homeless shelter, and then an orientation and a debrief. So my question is, since your problems are so interrelated, can you envision some sort of program that would start to expose busy people who are not ill-intentioned? They're just busy and need experience. I'm struck by what David's saying about getting people into South High School. Could you envision a program that would incorporate all three of the things you're talking about in the way of transit, education, and cross-cultural experiences that would at least start to get at some of the answers?
Get on a bus and sit next to somebody you don't know.
I mean, seriously, it really is.
Yeah. I mean, it can be that simple. There's lots of great organizations you can volunteer with and really get to know the voice of Mid-Ohio Food Bank is one of them, and really get to know your neighbors who are struggling in different ways than you are. But I think it can be that simple. Open yourself up more to simple things like getting on the bus and sitting next to somebody, like walking the other direction. We're all half a mile away from a different neighborhood and a different socioeconomic status here in the city, and the way that we live very close to each other and yet still divided. Walk your dog in the other direction. I think it can be that simple.
Next week, there are about 600 students and about 400 adults who are going to be in 3 different schools: Downtown High School, Whetstone High School, and South High School. In those schools, every afternoon between 3 and 7, the adults are they're just people who've signed up in the community. And they show up at the school, and they work with these students and administrators, and they're painting giant murals inside the school that are all about dreaming. The students all met and came up with their own themes and what they wanted, and then local artists came in and interpreted those themes, and then the students created it together. So what happens is, while they're painting, we don't have any rules, But what we do is just say, grab a brush, it's paint by number, so your skill set doesn't really matter. Just like there's no audition to sing in anything that we do, which sometimes is a troubling situation. But the reality is something happens when you're just standing there and you're painting and you begin to talk. And so what happens is teenagers from the South Side are meeting people who live in New Albany and Bexley and Hilliard and Grove City and Groveport. The administrators at that school get a chance to talk to those adults and tell them what their challenges are. That is the way that I think that we create what you're talking about, is this cross-cultural. It could be as simple as getting on a bus. It could be as simple as volunteering at a pre-K center. It could be as simple as painting a mural with somebody. A couple of years ago, Tom Katzenmeyer was on a ladder, and Tom's painting, and the guy next to him has no idea that Tom is the CEO of the Arts Council. Next to him is a guy named Diego who had just gotten out of prison. Tom had no idea that Diego had just gotten out of prison, because it didn't matter, because they were two guys on ladders painting a mural together for the Boys and Girls Club, because they both wanted to give back to the community. So that is the way people affect change in each other's lives, simply. It doesn't have to be a sit down and let's all try to process who we voted for and why, or what we disagree on. But if they just kind of come together and do something together that's a common social purpose, maybe that's where we affect that change.
And there are opportunities in Columbus City Schools for each of you to become a mentor. We have success mentors, project mentors. Being an influence in a child's life is very important, and all 52,000 of the children in Columbus Public Schools need one or more positive role models in their lives, and you could be that person doing that work and having a relationship with my child. In my department, it is a required opportunity to be a mentor in Columbus City Schools, and so actually I'm missing Project Mentor today. I've been with my mentee for 3 years, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and we have a wonderful relationship. Had a chance to meet her parents, and her mother has said she never wants to miss school on Wednesdays because she has Project Mentor. So you mean more than you think, and with teenagers, oftentimes it's hard to tell because they don't let you know, and believe me, I live with a 19-year-old, and it's very difficult. But you would have a great influence, and opportunities that you could give them that they would not be getting at home or they're not exposed to. So I want you to take that seriously. It really doesn't take that much time out of your lives to give at least an hour a week to a child.
Hi, Eric Davies. I'd say in many ways Columbus right now is at or near the top of our game as a city. I mean, things are really happening here, and yet we are becoming more and more aware of this growing divide in our city too, of race and poverty and just income segregation, and even, you know, some of the traditional red line districts around the city that are not coming up, and actually in some ways are really struggling, while other neighborhoods in other parts of the city are doing very well. And a week ago, Richard Florida was here, urban planner, who one of the things that he said that really stuck with me is that we really need to start localizing, and we need to not depend on the federal government to take care of us. And so I guess one of my thoughts I'd like to throw out to this panel is, how do you think we can do that? And do we need to start thinking about how we use and spread our resources differently so that we can differently affect education, healthcare, transportation, and just urban infrastructure and neighborhood planning? And do we need, and nobody wants to hear about taxation, but we really do need to find a way to kind of equalize the resources and take away some of the disparity. So I'd like your thoughts. Thanks.
Well, I'm not going to speak to infrastructure and all that because I'm not a bricks and mortar. I'm a people and community. But the whole idea of that we're becoming more divided as a city, well, we're becoming more divided as a world. I mean, it's happening all around the world. And the reason for that, at least the way I see it, is just because we have so much more access to information now than we used to. We now know how many differences we have. We now know the great disparity in income that there is. We have access to this. My boys are sitting there and I'll say something, they're like, you're factually wrong, you know, and they hold up the phone. They love that when that happens. Then I remind them that I can take that phone away from them because I pay for it, which is a fact, yeah. But the divisions, I think, look, there's the upside to the fact that we have access to education, access to information that changes lives. This morning I was at Nationwide Children's Hospital, and because of social media, there are families who have been told their child should go into hospice care who are being able to come to Columbus and go to Nationwide Children's because on social media they heard the story of the therapy program that they have here. So there's the life-changing and life-saving part of social media, and then there's the part that also points out and is the light that shines on the dark corners that we don't really necessarily want to see. But while it can sound like we're bashing Columbus when we start to get into the little pieces of it all here, I think all we're doing is acknowledging that because we're growing and because we're a grown-up city now, just like New Yorkers sit around and moan and complain about New York all the time, but they would never leave it, I think it's a sign of progress that we ask ourselves these questions and that we're trying to achieve to move forward. But as far as the nitty-gritty and that stuff, these two got to answer that question because I can't.
I can try. So, I mean, no doubt, right, and the Richard Florida presentation was really interesting last week. 40% of the people who live in Columbus live at 200% or below the poverty level, 35% in Franklin County. No doubt that there is a lot of us who are rising to the top and some of us that aren't coming along on the ride. And we got to find ways, and I think you're right, I don't think the federal government is going to provide the kind of help that they have in the past, and I am sorry about that. But I try to think about, you know, what are the things that help all of us? Right? What are the things that the next generation wants and people who are struggling want? And what are those things? And my opinion, you know, public transit is one of those things. It's what, you know, young people don't really want to own a car anymore. And people who don't own a car should have fast, accessible access to the city. So that's one specific thing. I think living wage is another. I think there's a lot of inequality issues that get fixed if we could each make a commitment to raise wages for the people who work for us. You know, 2/3 of the people who work at minimum wage are women, and the numbers are even higher when you think about African American women, Native women, and Latino women. And I think that those are two areas that we could concentrate on. Obviously, they're easier with federal dollars, but there are ways to decide that's important.
It's jobs. I think about the families of the students we serve, and you know, and it depends on the neighborhood. I think you know, I'm fortunate I work for a mayor who's looking at this neighborhood by neighborhood, because the approach that you take in Linden is not necessarily the same approach that you take in Hilltop, and we have to do a neighborhood by neighborhood approach and what works. No, we can't wait for the federal government, and no one is doing that. But it's important that, you know, people are employed, but they're underemployed, and they're not making the wages that they need to make to have a middle-class life. And so that means that, and then they're not trained to do the work that we need them to work, so then we don't have jobs to come to the city. But so it's just a, you know, it's just a vicious cycle. But that is what's going to help us most, especially in the schools, is our parents have really great jobs and can move into the middle class. Not everybody has been able to make it there because, you know, manufacturing changed, it's more high tech, but people aren't prepared to do those kinds of things. So on the other end of the spectrum, we have to make sure that our children graduate from high school and prepared for something, whether that's college or a job or the military or starting their business. You know, that is really not an easy answer, but I think we have to take a neighborhood by neighborhood approach.
You mentioned the Hilltop. How is the approach going to be different, do you think, in the Hilltop as opposed to Linden?
Well, you know, I can't answer that yet, because I think that is up for the members of the community to decide. I don't think we should tell the Hilltop what the Hilltop needs. I think it's for the Hilltop to tell us what it is that they need. And because a way to solve problems is with the people who actually live in the neighborhoods, working with them, not doing something to them. So the Hilltop community is going to have an opportunity to decide on their own design. The city is going to be doing work work with them starting in 2018. However, our department is getting in there early to start with early childhood before the rest of the design plan comes along, but that is a community issue for them to decide.
Thank you so much. Let's give them a I hope you enjoyed today's forum. You can view and share today's forum and all of our forums on CTV Columbus Television, on WOSU, and PBS affiliates statewide through the Ohio Channel, and anytime on CMC's website via YouTube. Please help me thank our partner, Columbus Monthly, our sponsors, Ulmer & Byrne, the Robert Weiler Company, and Puffin Foundation West. And our speakers, David Brown, Rhonda Johnson, Alyssa Snyder, and David Ghosh. And thanks to all of you for being here. We look forward to seeing you